Hello you amazing people, welcome back to RXMemes. Today we're jumping into r/prorevenge because you love that, let's be honest. As always, my socials are somewhere on the screen right now. If you want to get at me, if you want to send me your stories for me to read, I reply every single time if you just want to talk. I love that. If you like today's video, don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification bell, and let's get right into today's stories. Boss mistreats new guys, so new guys get boss demoted and then fired. So, back in my 20s, I worked for a large national sewer and drain company called Roto-Rooter. A great job and a great place to work where I was lucky enough to be trained by some of the most skilled technicians in the industry. There was, however, one supervisor. Let's call him Billy. Now, Billy was your typical kiss-up who spent most of his time trying to please anyone who he thought held an influence, the senior techs, or power, the branch and regional manager, and loved to lord his power. He made the shift schedules and scheduled time off over anyone who he thought he could push around. A typical interaction with one of the big earners, this is a commission job, would be something like, "Hey, you need a day off? Sure, just let me know when and I will be happy to help you." While if he was dealing with a new hire or a low earner, you were lucky if he would pick up the phone or take a second to hear you out. So one night, around my 3rd month on the job, I was sent to a mortuary to do some work, and while it was gross, hazard jobs like that paid really well, maybe $200 in your pocket for an hour's work. When it was done, I called and told him I was taking the rest of the night off due to some chemicals in their sewer making me feel a little woozy, and I didn't think it would be safe for me to operate heavy machinery. He flipped out and told me that if I didn't get back on the road, I would have a disciplinary hearing the next day, to which I said, "Sure, can't wait to see you there." As soon as I walked in, I requested someone from HR be present as well as our assigned safety officer. The safety officer position in the company is very important, as the company self-insures and any safety violation can get you fired on the spot. I let Billy go first and he says, "You can't leave whenever you want from your shift. You are getting a warning and next time I am going to fire you." I calmly reach into my bag and pull out our employee handbook and begin to read. While I don't remember the exact phrasing, it goes something like this. "If you feel at any time that the situation or job you are in is dangerous or may lead to a dangerous situation, you are to stop immediately." There was another section about being inebriated, exposed to methane gas from the sewer, being lightheaded, etc., and how you should go home and not operate any equipment under those conditions. It went so far as to say that transportation would be paid for by the company if you didn't feel safe driving. They were very big on safety since any insurance claims would be paid by them directly. I asked the safety manager if I did anything wrong and he supported me 100%. Then I asked HR what they thought and they said, "If it's a safety issue, you go home and don't worry about your shift." At this point, the regional manager asked me to leave the office and I hear him rip into Billy like a fat kid into cake. That should have been enough for me, but I am petty, I never forget, and I am very patient. As time goes on, I become one of the top earners in my city, get Rookie of the Year my 1st year and Salesman of the Year my 2nd. And Billy gets a reputation of being lazy and irresponsible. My 2nd year at the company, Billy is put on probation, and this is where I go into pro-revenge mode. I gather up all the new guys and some of my buddies from my shift and I organize them so at least once or twice a week, someone goes in there to complain about Billy. We never lied. We just knew what buttons to push to get him to self-destruct. New guys would ask for a day off or someone would take a sick day during a busy shift, etc. Finally, the branch manager snaps and calls Billy into his office. He demotes him to salesman and puts him on my shift. At a company like this, the shifts become very close. We all talk in our trucks through our radios while waiting for jobs. And we all help each other when needed. During Billy's first few weeks on the road, our supervisor makes sure he gets all the fun jobs. Flooded basements, tight spaces, and generally anything that will get him absolutely covered in poop. And of course, as all this was happening, I had every single person I was friends with at the company call him and ask him for scheduling changes, so he had to explain to about 30 people how he was demoted and no longer a manager. Eventually, Billy broke. He started crying to the dispatcher about how he couldn't take it anymore and quit. The next day, me and 2 other guys threw a Billy's Gone party with cake and pizza at a neighborhood bar, put up signs in the office, and made a general announcement in the morning when we went in to hand in paperwork when we knew Billy would be there to give in his 2 weeks notice. He actually came up to us to thank us, and I got the pleasure of informing him that he's not invited. It's not a going away party, it's a you're gone party. It wouldn't make sense for you to be at a party where we are celebrating you not being around anymore. In the end, only about 20 of the 50 employees at the branch showed up, but it was still a great party. My father's former boss didn't pay him overtime while scamming hundreds of people, so he made him lose over $500,000. Hi Reddit, I've recently learned about prorevenge thanks to a Reddit YouTuber named r/love that guy, also love that guy, and I decided to post my father's revenge story here. I hope you guys enjoy and do not have to encounter disgusting people like the man in this story. A little side note before I begin. I do not currently remember all the details of this revenge story as everything here happened around 10 years ago. Whenever I have the chance, I will ask my father for more details of the situation. I apologize in advance if things do not make sense as of now, but I will try my best to get as much detail as I can. My father has been working in the auto mechanic industry for about 21 years now, even before I was born. This story takes place when he was working for a well-known company we will call M and his boss, who we will call Pete. Pete owned several M shops in my state, his most prized one being in the northern area of the state. My father worked in a shop that was a little outdated with its equipment, but was in a wealthy town. Various police reports were filed against Pete and his managers because of making reports on cars. This will be important later. Story. My father started working for Pete in 2006 after he had to quit his former job working for another company with great benefits. He ended up working well over 70 plus hours a week with double time, so he couldn't complain at all. He met a really good friend named Frank, and they got along extremely well and became friends really quick. I met Frank one Friday afternoon after my ride home from school and made a quick stop to visit the shop for an oil change. Frank was an extremely nice family man, just like my father, and everything seemed fine for several years. Then the unexpected happened. My father had noticed that his paycheck had been short for the past year, 2008 to 2009, and had started to log his work hours. Unfortunately, my father didn't own any smartphones or any recording devices, as when you are a mechanic, you are paid anywhere from $15 to $25 an hour, and are expected to pay for tools that cost thousands. He went to Pete and requested to know why his paychecks have been short as of recent. This is how the conversation went down, as my dad has told me.
Unfortunately, our two shops have not been making enough profit on jobs.
Lie, as he opened a new shop, but has more than enough money to pay my father.
And we are in a tight financial struggle as of now. However, I promise that you will get your money within the next year.
Alright, but I will not be working any more overtime until I am owed my time. Showing Pete the log times and hours worked, which translates to $52,000.
Do not worry. I will make sure that you receive your check by the end of the 1 year mark.
Fast forward a year and a half, and he had not received a dime from Pete, and had not mentioned a thing about paying him back. My father was getting irritated by this, but decided to continue waiting. Frank had received a promotion to manager position, and this is where the juicy information gets relayed to my father. Pete had taught Frank as a manager to scam everyone who walks through the doors of the shop to gain additional income, as it was the unofficial company policy, so Pete could gain additional income and living the great life in his mansion. Pete was very wealthy, which we learned through Frank, and ended up having a nice Mercedes, several other cars, and went out to 5-star restaurants on a daily basis. My father took this information along with the several logged police reports for later use. A few months later, Pete told my father that,
I cannot pay you your owed amount of $52,000, but you will still be required to work overtime to get these jobs done. I'm terribly sorry for the inconvenience.
My father smiled and told him not to worry about it. A scheme was forming, as Pete just oiled the cogs to screw himself over. The revenge. A few months go by, and my father, Frank, and the kid of the shop discuss about taking Pete to court and suing him for not getting their paid overtime, as this was affecting them too. They gathered months' worth of information. Frank was useful as he had access to sensitive files in his manager position, and all planned to go to court. Unfortunately, Pete caught wind of the operation and threatened to fire Frank and the kid while immediately terminating my father. The two guys ended up backing out at the very last moment, but my father ended up having all the evidence he needed. Pete was going to get screwed. My father first brought the logs of his unpaid overtime, along with having the year's worth of pay stubs to prove even further evidence of the overtime, along with bringing up the police reports and the court summoning the victims of the scams. The look on Pete's face was ghost white, according to my father, as he knew he was done for. The IRS and state led an investigation against Pete because of the victims of fraud, and they found out that he has not paid any taxes in the past 5 years. He was given fine after fine, along with the victims' money to be returned to them, and my father's owed overtime. All of those fees ended up racking up to be a total of $750,000. After a year-long court case, my father ended up winning the case along with compensation due to wrongful termination. He was fired after Pete learned he was about to be sued. I will not disclose the exact amount that was paid, but it was well over the $52,000 he was owed. Don't mess with my father's money. Otherwise, you are in for a very bad time. Have any of you ever heard that saying where you shouldn't trust a friend if they're gossiping about somebody else because chances are they're gossiping about you to someone else? I feel like that situation applies to really every situation, and chances are if you have a boss who asks you to actively screw over every customer that comes in the doors, they don't have the integrity not to screw over their own employees or the respect. This person is a sociopath. They don't respect their employees. They don't respect their customers. And if you don't respect your customers and your employees, honey, guess what's gonna happen? You're gonna get fucked.